The talent level on the Plains is way up, but have the Tigers and Hugh Freeze caught up to Georgia? Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of every single day. Joining me as he does every single Wednesday morning is my good friend, Thrift Barringer, to talk a little Auburn football. We're talking rosters and talent and Georgia today on the podcast. More specifically, has Auburn caught up to Georgia in terms of talent? I have made this statement, Thrift, many times this offseason, and that's simple. Auburn might have the most talented team we've seen on the Plains in the last 20 years. Hugh Freeze has a quarterback room he likes with one former five-star, one current five-star quarterback. He's got a lot of talent in Ashton Daniels that comes in terms of experience and starts and things that he's accomplished at this level. You've got one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country with Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton, Perry Thompson, Horatio Fields, Bryce Kane, Malcolm Simmons. You've got the O-line that should be much, much better. You've got a defense that projects to be possible top 15, maybe even top 10 this season with a ton of NFL talent. This Auburn team is loaded with talent, and I think that they're just a rung below the Bulldogs at this point in terms of overall talent.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Mike. And I also think that this is a type of talent on this roster in which you can, I think, legitimately have a chance to upend Georgia or be competitive against them, especially when you're playing them at home. All right, so when looking at their roster, I'm with you on the offensive line. I see a lot of experience. I think that this group is going to be much improved from last year. You got to think the quarterback's going to be a lot better. From what I'm seeing from your videos and a lot of people that are inside the Auburn program, Damari Alston is just going to seamlessly transition into role Jarquez Hunter had, which if that's the case, and then you add Cam Coleman turning to the all-SEC receiver we think that he can be, plus the defense being a top 15, top 25 defense next year with the talent they have, at least top 40. I think this Auburn team, yes, has a legitimate chance to be competitive with Georgia. If they could do it 2 years ago, and I honestly think Auburn's roster has gotten better since that moment, Georgia's not near as good since that moment, that has to mean that Auburn can at least have a shot at upsetting Georgia, right?
Yeah, look, I think that it comes down to the skill positions at this juncture. Auburn, Kirby Smart has put together some really good teams in terms of the trenches. The offensive and defensive lines have been nuts. We saw Stetson Bennett turn into a Heisman candidate from a walk-on. They've always had great wide receivers, great DBs coming out of Athens. But I do feel like this was something Hugh Freeze decided he wanted to focus on when he got to Auburn. He talked about the talent gap between Auburn and the rest of the league. He thinks he's one recruiting class away from matching that talent. The rankings don't lie, man. Look at the talent that he's brought in. Look at how many freshmen contributed last year at a high level on defense for Auburn. These were top 150 kids. So he said, if we're not in the top 6 or 7 in recruiting by year 3, everybody here is going to be looking for a job. And they didn't wait till year 3. They got there in year 2. Now you're going into year 3, and he feels like he's one class away. I think that, we'll go through the skill positions here and see how they match up. But Thrift, this might be the first year in a long time that I think Auburn may not have the less talented quarterback on the field when these two teams meet game 6.
Now, if you're talking about potential,
Gunnar Stockton versus Jackson Arnold.
I mean, we're talking potential, who has the highest ceiling. I mean, I don't think there's really a debate in that regard. Honestly, I think that is Jackson Arnold. Does that translate on the field? We're going to see this upcoming year. I will tell you that I was impressed by Gunnar being thrown in the fire and the way he finished out with Georgia. I know he didn't have the greatest game against Notre Dame, but he also didn't have a lot of time to throw either. The offensive line was lack thereof. Listen, I'm with you. I think that this Auburn roster obviously is much improved, but we're not going to kid ourselves and be the ultimate homers and said it's up there with Georgia. Georgia still has more talent than Auburn, but Auburn has enough talent with the factor of being at home to upset Georgia. Plus, Georgia's having a lot of more unknown than they had probably since going into that 2021 year. That was the last time we really were, hey, how good is this Georgia team? Because since then, every year they're one of the favorites or the top favorite to win it all. You're not saying that this year. That's Texas. So I think with all those factors that can translate, and I want to throw another one in there for you, Mike. The fact is, if you look at Georgia, obviously they play Alabama before they play Auburn, but that's at home. But if you look at Georgia's schedule, here are their road games: at Mississippi State, at Auburn, at Neyland. Do you consider Davis Wade? Do you consider, I mean, not Davis Wade, sorry. Do you consider the Florida game being a road game?
Oh, yeah, in Jacksonville.
Okay, so if you consider that being a road game, what's the toughest road game Georgia has on their schedule? I think it's Auburn. Even if you put Florida in there, because that's supposedly a neutral location, I would say Auburn's tougher than Mississippi State. And then in Knoxville with Tennessee, they're having to replace a quarterback. Do we know how good they're going to be? I think they'll come in higher ranked than Auburn. Doesn't mean they're better than Auburn. This could be Georgia's toughest road game of the season. I think that could have a factor in it as well. What do you think when looking at Georgia's schedule?
Yeah, I do think that could be their toughest road game. Now, I talked a lot about the schedules in previous segments. The elimination of divisions has opened up the opportunity for Auburn to have the type of schedule that Georgia normally has.
Right.
And, we all know what that is. Not exactly easy, but a lot easier than a lot of their SEC counterparts. Now you have Auburn, who has a really, really good roster. You've got the quarterback that they definitely want. They try to sell that that Peyton was the guy that they wanted, but I think he was what was left and what they could get. Jackson Arnold, I believe Hugh Freeze, when he wanted him, I mean, he recruited him out of high school. It's all well documented. He's been following for a long time. He said he thought he was a freak in high school. He thinks he's a freak still now. He says he's in a better place at Auburn than he was at Oklahoma. But, it's where are these teams going to be when they match up? If you're Auburn, you open with Baylor, you got Ball State, you got South Alabama, then you got 2 road games against Oklahoma and Texas A&M before you get Georgia, before you come back home for Georgia. So you'll be on the road for 2 straight weeks before you get Georgia. If you look at Georgia's schedule, look at what Florida did last year.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody had Billy Napier dead to rights, but before the season was over, their AD came out and gave a statement of confidence to Billy Napier. I thought he did a bang-up job. DJ Lagway might be a better quarterback than any that Auburn and Georgia currently have on their roster that will play next year.
Yeah.
So I think that ranks up there. That might be one of their top 2 toughest games of next year, in my opinion. I think so. Look, man, they call it the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, or whatever the hell that is that they're doing there. But I don't really consider that a neutral site game. Georgia fans will travel well for that. Right. Florida fans will travel well for that. That's a really, really good matchup for them, and it should be fun. I think it'll be a good litmus test for both those teams.
Yeah, and the whole reason I was bringing it up was because I think Auburn, obviously between them or Florida, is Georgia's toughest road test next year. So adding that into the factor, plus the Tennessee and Alabama, who Georgia had to play before they get to Auburn. Auburn obviously has a tough stretch in their own right with Oklahoma and A&M, even though I'd be willing to argue that Oklahoma A&M is a little bit better matchup for Auburn on the road than Georgia playing Alabama at home and then at Tennessee. So it really depends on where each team are at in that point. I'm again leaning towards Auburn, hopefully in that aspect, being competitive and hopefully maybe upsetting Georgia for the first time since 2017. Man, God, it is feeling weird when I say that we have not beat Georgia since 2017. That's a long time, Mike.
Well, this is why I wanted to do this topic today. Ultimately, the line of fire that Hugh Freeze has to cross in year 3 is how close have you gotten truly to the top of the league? Right now, the class of the league is Georgia and Texas. It's it. I'm not counting. I think Alabama's on the decline. I mean, they're set to have a really good recruiting class, but I think they have a coaching handicap. I don't think Kalen DeBoer is anywhere near as good as Nick Saban. And I think we saw that yesterday. He inherited the most talented team on paper any coach has ever inherited, one to another, and he missed the playoffs with them. So, and he lost to Vanderbilt. So yeah, I don't know that Alabama is in this conversation for top 2 in the league. I think Georgia and Texas are the standard right now. And if you're Hugh Freeze, you can show the world that you're close if you can go in and you can take them to the fourth quarter at home. Truly. Now, look, they had the ball at the 50-yard line down 10 points in the fourth quarter versus Georgia last year. I think this is a better roster. This game is in Auburn. It's going to come down to who has the players to make the plays at the end of the game. Look at Texas and Arizona State last year. Arizona State went on an epic run, Thrift. They were picked to finish dead last in the Big 12, and they won the whole damn thing. And boy, was that game versus Texas entertaining. At the end of the game, who made the play? It was Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers made the play that they needed to win the game, and they won it. Yeah. A touchdown pass in overtime. It was made for TV stuff. Stars matter, especially when you're recruiting so many of them than the rest of them. And when those stars are at quarterback, you've got the guy to make the plays. When these two teams meet, game 6, who are you picking? Are you picking Jackson Arnold to make the play at the end of the game, or are you picking Gunnar Stockton?
And here's another thing, too. Nate Frazier does return. He was their leading rusher last year. But how good do you think this Georgia offense is going to be? Offensive line, they're having to replace some key players. They do return Dylan Bell, who has been a big contributor over the last couple of years. But offensively, you got to think this is the biggest question mark Georgia's had in quite some time. And then I'm going to go back to the schedule again because Auburn's sandwiched right in there before Tennessee and Alabama. After Tennessee and Alabama, and before Ole Miss, Florida, Texas in that final stretch for Georgia. So tough schedule as we keep talking about with the Bulldogs, and Auburn's right in the middle of all those. Maybe that can be one of those games that they either overlook or maybe they're dealing with injuries, licking their wounds from Alabama and Tennessee, overthinking that, hey, we got Ole Miss and Florida coming up next. Who knows what could happen there? But I think Auburn is set up this year for the first time, I think probably since 2019, to have a legitimate chance with their roster to take down the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I do too. Look, you've got to pull off some upsets in year 3 if you're Hugh Freeze. Year 2 and year 1 and year 2 went so terribly. You got to pull off some upsets. Right. And this one is prime for the taking. Now, we had some people in our comment section on another segment we did about the schedule thrift, and they said, Mike, I don't know if Georgia is the automatic L that you think it is. And of those 3 games, there are Auburn fans that feel like Georgia might be the best shot at a win in the first 3 SEC games that Auburn has. That sounds like a wild statement, but when you start to look at how the talent stacks up, I'm not sure that it's that wild of a statement. I think if they have it together from a coaching standpoint, they have a good game plan, Auburn might have 3 of the best players on the field when these teams meet. And I know that sounds wild, but you got Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton, and Damari Alston is going to be a dude. I just think that they've got a really good shot to pull an upset here.
Well, and think about when Auburn was at its best, they were not one-dimensional. Think about how in 2023, when the game went down to the wire, Peyton Thorne was unbelievable with his legs, okay? And then he also was able to throw the football around when needed to, but they were balanced offensively, and that's why they stayed in the game. If Auburn can continue that type of balance, but throwing in the factor that Cam Coleman and this receiving core can give you hopefully 200 to 300 yards in the air, then you add the factor of his legs with Damari Alston. This balance of this Auburn offense, I think, could give Georgia some trouble. And I know how good Georgia's defense has been. It's been an Achilles heel for Auburn offenses going back to Mark Richt, Gus Malzahn, and even when Todd Grantham was the defensive coordinator there. I think this year, though, if everything goes according to plan, and I keep emphasizing according to plan, because we're really just – right now we're really just throwing stones out there and just hoping that it hits something. But if Arnold is as good as he's been advertised, I don't know why Auburn can't have a chance to put up 30 or 40 points. I wouldn't say 40 points, but at least be 20, 30 points and be competitive against Georgia and have an offense that doesn't stale out and keeps them in the game.
Look, Hugh Freeze is really confident in his quarterback. He's so confident. He didn't even pretend to have a quarterback battle for QB1 this spring. He said Jackson Arnold's my starter. Deuce Knight and Ashton Daniels understand what they've gotten into when they got here. So if he's healthy and he's playing well come that game, it's going to be fun to watch where it all lands. Thrift stars matter, especially at quarterback. But who has the bigger star at that position, Auburn or Georgia? We'll talk about that right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of the Auburn Express is brought to you by our friends at the Vibe Vault. You can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Suite E in Phoenix City, Alabama. That's right across the street from the Chattahoochee Valley Community College, next to Renfro's Supermarket and Marco's Pizza. The Vibe Vault. If you're in the Columbus, Phoenix City area and you're looking to get fresh for the weekend, get fresh for the weekend with the Vibe Vault. Not just barbers, lifestyle consultants. This episode of The War Report is brought to you by The Rogue Shop. Visit therogueshop.com and use code REPORT to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever is ailing you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. I got Richard, longtime sponsor of the show. We appreciate him for sponsoring this segment. And our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com/WR. Use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weights and code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. Golden's Cast Iron, guys. Summer is here. You want to be outside by the grill making memories with your family and or just staying in shape with Golden's Cast Iron weights. Again, visit goldenscastiron.com/WR. Work out, grill out, chill out with Golden's Cast Iron. So if let's jump back in here. Who has the bigger star at quarterback right now, Georgia or Auburn? It's hard, right? It's hard because neither of these guys has done a ton so far at the P4 level. But I would argue that Jackson Arnold, as of right now, has done more. One guy has won multiple games in the SEC, the other not so much. I think this could be advantage Auburn when this matchup plays out. Now, we mentioned these guys being highly rated recruits. Let's take a look at where these guys were at coming out of high school here. You had Gunnar Stockton, a 94 overall rating. He was ranked 112th 10th nationally.
Right.
Now he was a Georgia product. Tiger City, Georgia is what they have here. Rabun County. I know you do a lot of work here at high school. Tell me about Rabun County.
Yeah, Rabun County, that is in the middle of nowhere in Georgia, but a really good football school. And honestly, it's just like everywhere that's in the state of Georgia, these rural schools. I'm glad you brought this up. I want to say this quickly. There's a thing going around in the state of Georgia of how much high school coaches are getting paid. And you see like Carrollton, counties like Rabun County that have only 1 or 2, maybe 4 high schools at max. The football coaches are getting a little bit more money, and that also translates to their programs being a little bit better too, because you're paying for the top notch. I just wanted to throw that out there. But he comes from a place that football is the king. It's where everything shuts down in that county on Friday nights to watch them play.
Yeah. Then you've got Jackson Arnold here. Again, highly rated recruit as a prospect, a composite 5-star guy. The rankings were kind of all over the place there, but he was highly regarded coming out of high school from Denton, Texas. So Texas kid. 2 of the probably the more fertile recruiting grounds in the country there in Texas and Georgia. Jackson Arnold committed to Oklahoma out of high school. He is now an Auburn Tiger. Now, well known what kind of struggles they had at Oklahoma offensively. Every wide receiver, it seemed like, got hurt. I'm not sure that John Mateer is going to be the solution for all their offensive problems there as he takes over at quarterback. But Jackson Arnold is another guy highly coveted. Could have written his ticket anywhere, and now he's an Auburn Tiger. He'll be a junior this year. He played his first 2 years, and he's got this year and next year left to play. Jackson Arnold, in my mind, I think is not only the better prospect, but he is the better player right now.
Okay, so a couple things. One, if you look at Gunnar Stockton's senior season in 2021, remember he came out in the 2022 class. In 2021, he had 55 touchdowns and 1 interception his senior year. 55 touchdowns, 1 interception, lost to Thomasville in the quarterfinals. He also ran for 956 yards and 15 touchdowns. So underrated athleticism too. I think people are really sleeping on how good Gunnar Stockton was. But if you look at Jackson Arnold, he just looks like he's the better athlete, especially compared to SEC athletic ability. All right, because we've seen that last year, and the guy looked like a stud. Now, Gunnar was not bad, and he looked formidable against Texas. Obviously, wasn't terrible against Notre Dame. I'm leaning Jackson Arnold as the better player, okay? Obviously, last year, he didn't have the greatest season, or he wouldn't have transferred from Oklahoma. They would have bought into him. But he did get the experience. Gunnar had a pretty good experience himself, Mike. I mean, playing Notre Dame, the college football playoff, that's experience. Even though he wasn't great then, that's something he can take for next year. I really think it's a coin flip. I'm going to lean Jackson Arnold because I'm going to go off. He has the highest ceiling. So I'm thinking positive for Auburn fans that it's going to be a good year for him, which if they're both having great years, I think Jackson can take it to another level that Gunnar can't. But I would not sleep on Gunnar Stockton. 55 touchdowns, 1 interception, and close to 1,000 yards rushing his senior year in high school is nothing you can hold your head down about, man. So I think if he's in the right position and they put him in the correct offense, Mike Bobo believes in him, Gunnar could put up good numbers just like Carson Beck did.
Yeah, I believe that both these guys are talented, Thrift. However, if the game were tomorrow, I'm taking Jackson Arnold. That's it.
I think
I'm taking Jackson Arnold.
Okay. I'm going to take him too. But I'm telling you, to get thrown into the fire against Texas and Notre Dame, Mike, and to keep your team competitive and not look lost, I'm telling you, that has to go for something. I know, again, he was not great against Notre Dame, but neither was that offensive line. I'm not putting it all on Gunnar Stockton. I would not sleep on him. I'm going to go with Jackson Arnold because I feel like the higher ceiling means that he has the better potential, especially if Hugh Freeze puts him in the right position to be successful.
Hard to have this conversation without rating the weapons that they have to throw to. And this is another reason why I'm giving the edge to Jackson Arnold. I have been high on this Auburn wide receiver room all offseason. I was a big Malcolm Simmons guy going into last season. He did nothing but prove me right as far as I'm concerned. Hugh Freeze said he had an excellent spring, and they feel like he's going to be a very dynamic playmaker. I know that Eric Singleton and Cam Coleman are getting a lot of the headlines coming out of that wide receiver room, but Malcolm Simmons could end up being a guy that torches Georgia while you're paying all this attention to Malcolm Simmons and Eric Singleton. And don't forget, they said Eric Singleton runs a 40-yard dash in the low 4.2s.
Wow.
He's blazing fast. And now conversations are starting to come up about him and where he might land in the draft as a player just based on pure athleticism. I have a hard time believing that Georgia is going to have an answer for everybody unless Jackson Arnold just goes out there and completely craps the bed. I want to say this. I'm not calling an Auburn win by any stretch. As a matter of fact, I had this game pegged as an L. I haven't quite changed my mind since I made that prediction. But I will tell you, this is the most confident I feel about the tools that Auburn has going into this Georgia game, feeling like, barring injury, they match up well. I think they match up well, and I think they have the tools to make this more of a game than it has been before in the past. And then defensively, Auburn kept them in that game last year.
He did.
I know Georgia scored 31 points, but in Power 4 play, that was the most points anybody scored on Auburn all of last year.
No, I agree with you, Mike. Defensively, I'm still leaning Georgia. Offensively, I'm leaning Damari Alston over Nate Frazier. I think the running back, I mean, either way, I don't think you lose if you got Georgia's running back class or if you have Auburn's running back room. Wide receivers, though, I don't think it's even close. And I'm definitely thinking that everyone would agree Auburn's got the better wide receiver room and more talent there. Now, Colby Young's a really good player that's coming from Miami that is transferred into Georgia. Zachariah Branch coming from USC, had over 500 yards last year. Plus, Dylan Bell was a pretty good player for Georgia, and I think the most talented receiver on the roster last year. Georgia's got talent, but I would lean Auburn. But I think you're missing one key component, man. You talk about receivers. You talk about the offensive line. I would probably lean Georgia, but this is Auburn's best offensive line it's had in several seasons. Who do you believe in more, Mike Bobo or Derek Nix, Hugh Freeze?
Ooh,
who's gonna make the better calls, man? And I'm just telling you, if you go off of resume, Mike Bobo has the better resume with quarterbacks, man. And as much as Georgia fans want to hate on him, if you look at his numbers, he's usually has a top 15, top 10, sometimes maybe top 25 offense in the country. The guy knows how to make calls. He knows how to develop quarterbacks. That's where I think, throw out everything else. Who's going to call the better game? Who do you trust more? Because I don't even know who's calling plays for Auburn. We think it's Hugh Freeze. Is it Derek Nix? We know Mike Bobo's making the call. Where are you going with that? And are you still leaning Auburn?
Look, I think that when you look at the opportunities that were there with better execution, and we may see a whole different Auburn offense. Here's one thing to note. They've been holding back these first 2 years because they haven't felt like they had the personnel thrift to run the sort of offense that they want to run ultimately. And last year you heard Hugh Freeze press conference after press conference talk about them shrinking the playbook in season. So a very frustrating conversation to have. So this might be the closest to a Hugh Freeze offense that we've seen since he's gotten to Auburn. And look, the first two, if you're listening to this and you're asking yourself, why are these guys talking about, talent matchups in June? Well, when this coach got here, he could not stop talking about the talent gap, the talent gap, the talent gap, the talent gap. This is the third offseason we're going into with him, and he has stopped talking about it.
Because there's not much of a gap, Mike.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's a reason he stopped talking about it. So this will be the litmus test to see how far you've come. Now, when I asked him during the interview about missing a bowl game, I mentioned a lot of people felt like missing a bowl game last year wasn't about talent. He didn't run from that. He said, you're absolutely right. We're not hiding from the fact that we got to coach it better, but also you got to point to the kind of truncated system that they ran because of the personnel that they had. Well, they got some better personnel in. A lot of the personnel that they had that returned is a year more experienced, a year older, a year better. And they added some very, very key pieces through the portal that should create more opportunities for the skill positions to go out there and put points on the board. At the end of the day, Thrift, when you look at that schedule, Auburn only gave up more than 30 points to one opponent, and that was Texas. I'm sorry, outside of Texas A&M in the losses. In the losses, they only gave up more than 30 points to one opponent, and that was Georgia.
Yeah.
Texas A&M, 4 overtimes. Obviously, that game was in the 40s, but certainly they kept everybody. They kept every single game in a winnable, kind of phase of the game. And if you score 28 points per game in Power 4 play, you might win potentially every single game you lost last year.
No,
28 points per game, Thrift.
Yeah. And listen, I am not of the belief, and I see a lot of comments like, Hugh Freeze, what did he do? How did he get this job? He only beat Bama twice. He made Bo Wallace look like an All-American. For all of Bo Wallace's bad traits, he literally had Bo Wallace at Ole Miss in conversation and was ranked number 1 or number 2 for a good portion of that 2014 season. He had Chad Kelly. He was more worried about messaging Mia Khalifa than he was playing quarterback, and yet he still won 10 games, Mike. I am not hearing that Hugh Freeze can't coach. He has had he's had talent at the quarterback position, but I don't think he's ever had a guy as talented as Jackson Arnold. I think Jackson Arnold has been the most talented guy he will have coached, even going back to Malik Willis, because I think he helped develop Malik into that player. Coming in to the Ole Miss, coming in to Liberty, coming in to Auburn, name one quarterback he has coached that has been more talented than Jackson Arnold. I don't think there's one out there. And if you believe he did great jobs with Chad Kelly and Bo Wallace and Malik Willis, why can he not do that with Jackson Arnold? Just had to throw that out there.
Yeah, look, it's going to be fun to watch what they can do. Always fun to talk about it with you, my friend, as always. Look, we're going to continue this conversation, but Thrift, I want to thank you for joining me today. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, we're the only live and local sports talk morning show in the Auburn, Harris County, Muskogee County, Columbus, East Alabama, West Central Georgia area. 92.1 Sports Visions, DJ Jones, former All-American at Georgia, myself, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then, of course, all things high school locally. We also talk national stuff as well, and we do college. Georgia, Alabama Sports Live is where you can cover all things. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Guys, if you're in the comments after this video, do us a favor, smash that super thanks button if you want to show us some love. We'll be live from SEC Media Days, bringing you guys lots of great content. Thrift will be there with me live, as well as all of our other regular weekly guests. It's going to be a ton of fun. That's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. We're signing off, and as always, War Eagle.